Hello there, my name is Dr. Saleem Javed. I am an associate professor at the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication at Lingas Lalita Devi Institute of Management and Sciences, affiliated with Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. We have been talking about acquisition of theatre and other film industry in this video, and today it is the lecture about understanding cinema. Now, as we have talked about that how from East Coast to northwest of down Los Angeles, Hollywood, a mass migration took place between 1908 to 1913, and we got to know the reasons behind this mass migration, how MPPC was bothering the new production companies, the patent companies, the patent company was the name MPPC, and how people, those who were not part of MPPC, they preferred to flee, from East Coast to the Northwest, which was the Los Angeles, which later got to be known as Hollywood. Now, if you remember that we talked about that the early investors were little businessmen who invested during chaotic initial decade of cinema. Now, what is this chaotic initial decade of cinema means? Now, in basically Hollywood, which now we know as Hollywood, initially everything was like independent. Then later on, MPPC was formed, and MPPC tried to hold the entire industry with iron hand. So people preferred to get away from there, and then they moved to Los Angeles, or later as it got to be popular as Hollywood. Now, who were the initial people who invested? Obviously, they were small or petty businessmen who wanted to have a good return on their investment. So but at that point of time, what was popular? Obviously, if you remember that when we talked about initial cinemas, so any shop was converted into a cinema hall, and you'll get to know that how cinema hall itself started. What was we have talked about it at a length also, that how cinema hall itself became a center of attraction for all the people where it was made. Now, the initial businessmen who invested, in this proposition were small, businessmen, and at that point of time, Nickelodeon operators were there, penny arcades were there, small film manufacturers were there, and distribution had its own shape, and exhibition had its own shape. So it was all crude. It was not the way we know it today. Now, uh, this 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 everything, this practice, now one thing, another thing which was as important as MPPC was block booking. Now, if you remember, we talked about at length about block booking in few of our videos. So the practice of block booking had resulted in such abuse that the nation's foremost exhibitors revolt against the Hollywood based production companies, akin earlier rebellion of independents like Zukor against the monopoly of patent companies. So, I am again talking about MPPC, and how independents, so called independents who were not part of the MPPC, which was the troop was led by Zukor. I will be talking about Zukor at length, how he revolutionized the entire system, how the iron grip of MPPC was loosened, and how there was a there was obviously a kind of non-cooperative movement technically, and to an extent a violent movement against the MPPC. Now, through block booking, one thing was absolutely clear. Block booking established one thing for everyone, which is the takeaway of block booking or MPPC, that whosoever controls the distribution controls the medium. Now, this is something which even true today also, that is the only reason that every major production company in the world, including India, you know, they have some, either they have a direct distribution control, or they have some arrangement, you know, or some deals in place for the distribution of their films. It is like across the world, you know, and uh, for the first time when people realize that distribution is the key, you know, for us, you know, when we go to film schools, you know, film production is the key. But when you become professional and when you start working and when you you know, start making films, then you realize that distribution is far more difficult than the production of the film. And this is pure out of experience that I am saying, that I happen to know a lot of people, those who have made their films, the film is with them, it's a finished product, but they are struggling for the distribution. And distribution sometimes, you know, it is not a hyperbole, to be very honest, sometimes it can take years, lot of calculation, permutation, combination, and sometimes it can take years before your film is released. And sometime, you know, because the distribution or the projection, you know, the screening as we know it is delayed, sometimes good films have lost their relevance in theater. Now, as I said, that Zukor is one of the main persons who, you know, led the band against MPPC. In the same way, the person who, you know, took the initiative of challenging block booking was W. Hodinson. Now, if, as you can see on your screen, that W. Hodinson from 1881 to 1971, you know, quite 90 years, the original founder of the Paramount Exchange in 1914, who helped abolish block booking temporarily by 1918. Remember, First World War and Second World War is going on, and secured exclusive distribution right of the film of the industry's foremost star, Charlie Chaplin. Now, Charlie Chaplin, you know, became a big name in second, you know, in 1920s, 1910 to 1920s. He became a big star. In response, Paramount famous players Lasky Corporation ventured into the theater industry in 1919, acquiring first-run venues and exhibition circuits nationwide. Now, this information is, you know, very important. One of the best part about US film industry is that majority of the development is documented. You know, there are proofs, there are photographs, there are footages. So it is well documented, well preserved, well kept. When I teach history of Indian cinema, you know, sometime you know, you have some rushes of some films, but majority of it was not saved. You get glimpse of it through pictures, through some found footage with someone, but because the process of preservation was not there, so we have lost many of our valuable films. So the block booking was temporarily abolished by 1918. So immediately after that, you know, this you know, corporation like this famous player Lasky Corporation ventured into the theater industry in 1918, and then 1919 the acquisition of theater nationwide. Now, Zukor's company to secure exhibition location was a relentless and merciless, as the MPPC conflicted with independent producers a decade ago. His operatives were referred to as the wrecking team, or the dynamite gang, by independent theater proprietors from New England to Texas to Colorado. Now, understand the you know, the scale of acquiring theaters. Imagine the madness that the teams were sent to acquire theaters, like Basti Khali Karani hai type, so that sort of a feeling was there, and Zukor's campaign to secure exhibition locations was as relentless and merciless as the conduct of MPPC itself. Now think of that time, that if we have got distribution with us, if we have got exhibition with us, we can control the production part of it, and eventually every filmmaking company got into distribution and exhibition, and we have talked about it at length, what role theater played, the socio-political importance of the theaters, cinema halls as we popularly know them, in 1920s across India, across world. Obviously, nations who went into First World War, obviously they really had to suffer. Then there was Second World War. Then you have different sort of cinema emerging out of it. So after the First World War, by 1921, Paramount famous player Lasky possessed 303 theaters, while First Nation held 639 theaters. Now look at the number, and these are not the numbers of PVR or some other, exhibition chain. We are talking about 1921. I mean, this is a reality now in India in 2025. This particular company has got 303 theaters, and this particular company has got 700 screens. We are talking about 1921, and we are talking about Paramount, we are talking about famous, we are talking about Paramount at that point of time, and the First Nation had almost 640 cinemas with them. Look at look at that, they knew in advance the importance of having more theaters in their country and the reason to acquire them. One of the main reasons that one of the main reasons, this is straight out of research only, one of the main reasons that Indian films are not able to earn more, one of the major reasons is that we are very low on the number of screens in India, and especially single screens. And because the moment I say single screen, it means that the nature of the film is very much different, because single screen films tend to cater to the masses, whereas multiplex screen tends to cater to the classes. So unless you do not have mass films, mass films means single screen, because there is where you don't have the the foundation of being sophisticated. I mean, such is the way. I can't, I'm not criticizing it, nor I am upholding it, but that's the way it is. India has got a very unique system of celebrating cinema in single screen. If you read some good books, I mean, there is a very interesting book, I am forgetting the name of that book. It is exclusively about the film screens, about the cinema screens in India, and it talks about the celebration which used to happen in front of the screen. And recently we have witnessed it on social media, but not in a very good taste. So these things are true, that single plex or single screen audience behave in a certain way, and multiplex audience behave in a certain way. There can be a very beautiful research on the behavioral pattern of single screen audience and this multiplex screen audience. There can be a beautiful comparison. Now, the conflict with First Nation and the subsequent Leos incorporated the patent of MGM. Now, look what names are you hearing? You are hearing Paramount, you are hearing names like MGM, you will be hearing names like Goldwyn, you will be hearing, they started then. I am talking about 1920s right now, you know. Paramount became bankrupt in 1920s, as you know it, and they really got together and then established themselves as one of the leading film production company in the world. Now, the names that I am taking is Fox, Paramount, Goldwyn, Universal. Uh, they all had aligned with the Zukor's firm in competition for theatre purchase. Now, such was the influence of Zukor that all the big names that are still alive, Fox Studios, Goldwyn, Universal, or for that matter, Universal Pictures, they were they were competing against a person called Zukor in 1920s. The ongoing participation of major American corporation in filmmaking commenced, and fewer than 10 years following the closure of shopfront theatre, cinema evolved into a substantial industry. Now, what exactly happens in 1920s? 1920s is a very fascinating time in terms of cinema, not only in terms of Hollywood, in terms of German cinema. I'll be talking about German cinema, I'll be talking about Russian cinema, I'll be talking about Indian cinema also during the lectures in the coming series. And this is the time when First World War, 1914 started, and by that time, like Italian film industry was very powerful, French film industry, film the art movement was going on. Germans started gearing up by making UFA, so that they can continue with their propaganda. Because US was not involved, so they kept on improving, they kept on improvising, they kept on upgrading themselves, and how it became the way we know it today. That is really important to understand. So, by 1920s, everybody, when the war ended, everybody was trying to get into the shoes, and but by that time, Hollywood films got their international dominance. Now, you really have to understand that the rise of Hollywood to international dominance is a result of many things. First, the World War, it was not on that continent. Obviously, it was on this side of the continent. So, Italy, France, UK for that matter, Russia for that matter, Germany for that matter, they were like part of it. US was not part of it. So, it gave a leverage, it provided leverage for that film industry when the entire world was affected. We Indians were indirectly affected by it, but not directly. So, when the World War was going on, World War I was going on, they were literally thriving, and that was the period which gave them an edge. Now, when it comes to the competition on the open market, the American film industry had to catch up with all of Europe's big players before August 1914, and for a while it had been falling behind, and that's the reality. I mean, French industry was doing fabulous, Italian Italian film industry was doing fabulous, and it is very surprising for many people, but American film industry was not up to the mark of these two film industries. UK was initially a laggard, they picked up quite late, but Italian film industry and French film industry, they were like far ahead of American film industry before August 1914, the First World War. Unfortunately, Italy's once famous spectacle had already degenerated into turgid or rigid cliche by the time war broke out, and France had become a cinematic reaction due to the shifting influence of milieu and film the art movement. I'll be talking about the film the art movement exclusively in coming videos, but you really have to understand that yes, war gave an advantage. There were fantastic movements in Italy and France, but obviously when socio-political condition of a country is under economical instability, a lot of problem happens. Now, as you can see on your screen, that it says that in contrast, the United States had experienced rapid audience growth and a notable improvement in film production quality in the years leading up to the World War II, thanks to the emergence of big budget features. Now, look, understand this when I say this, that you have got an advantage. Suppose in day to day language, luck has given you an advantage, but how you encash that advantage, that is something that we must learn from American film industry, that they got advantage, fine, but they used that opportunity up to the level of Second World War. They were obviously involved in the Second World War, but they came up with newer formats, they came up with big budget feature films, they came up with a lot of other things. Now, one very distinctive striking point here is that, as you can see on your screen, that some serious books were written on American films, and newspapers formed regular column for photoplay reviews. As a result, these films were gaining respectability as an art form in certain areas. Now, this is really important point. Please understand, sometimes when a new art form gets the status of an art form itself, there is where the respectability increase among people. Now, there are many art forms, I call them art forms, but they are not, I mean, people have not accepted them as an art form, and that is the only reason that the economics of that art form has never evolved. Unless you do not take a form as an art form, you cannot weave a very you cannot weave a ecosystem of economics around that art form. Now, American cinema thrived in relative economic and political safety during the war. At the same time, European industries were largely shut down. Now, this is important, largely shut down when war broke out on the continent in the later summer of 1914. Now, look at this on your screen, that this was due to the fact that the chemical used to make celluloid were also needed to make gunpowder. Obviously, when there is a war going on, then celluloid is not the priority, gunpowder is the priority, and there is where the production, the focus of the production shifted from celluloid to gunpowder. So, any country which was involved in making films and were part of the First World War, so the chemical used to make celluloids were also needed to make gunpowder. What a pity it was. It was believed that the United States produced just slightly more than half of the world's total number of motion pictures in 1914, but by 1918 it had become the largest producer of virtually all the world's film. Look at the growth in just 4 to 5 years time, that you are not up to the mark of Italian or French film industry, suddenly you get a chance. By 1914, half of the world's film, you are the producers, you are the producer of the half of the world's film, and within 4 to 5 years, it had become the producer of virtually all the world's film. For a period of 4 years, American experienced complete control over the international market and established a strong worldwide distribution infrastructure. Now, this is something which we really have to understand, that the growth has got a lot of permutation and combination. Thank you very much.